Wow. Those were a lot of really amazing things. Did any of you have, that you are those? I am that I am. You know, you come to a place in your life when you realize that you are God. And I don't know about y'all, but that kind of choked me the first time I had to say that. But yet the collective of all of us together is one God. And every expression of it is who we are and who we show up to be in our world. This week we're going to talk about several things, but one of them is draining relationships. Because just in our life, coming into here, we're in a safe place. We're in a place that's filled with love. And you feel it when you walk in the door, you get that when you interact with people. But when you go out into the world, is it the same? Rarely. We would like for it to be the same. And the more we interact with love, then the easier it is for other people to interact lovingly with us. But that's not always the case. So how many of you have come to this place in your life through a little bit of ups and downs? And if I were to tell you that if you had to think of somebody who really created what ultimately is a great lesson for you, but sometimes could be painful, did you get kind of a, oh yes, somebody immediately came to mind? There are people like that in the world. So what I'm going to do today is I want to talk a little bit about where you are and where you want to be and some tools to be able to get you there easily and effortlessly, and you keep working on it. I'm still working on mine as well. The cool thing was, I don't know if y'all are readers of Nora Roberts. I'm a big Nora Roberts fan. So I had this friend of mine, she sent me a Facebook message yesterday, and she goes, look who I met up with. Thinking, who is that? It's Nora Roberts. She's sitting there with a hug. I said, I hope you gave her a hug for me, because I really enjoy her. This is her new book, Undercurrents. So imagine my surprise when I picked it up and I started reading it the other day, and the first third of the book is about a perfect family. How many of you came from a perfect family? There is no such thing. In this perfect family, it is a doctor who's head of the surgical unit and a wife that is the head of the PTA. She is perfect in every way. She throws elaborate parties and charitable events. And at home, something incredibly different is going on. He is a violent abuser, and she is one that just sits there and takes it. And they have two perfect children, but not because they love children. It's just because it was part of the facade. Now, the thing about it is that terrible things happen in families, but terrible things happen in what seems to be perfect families, and that there are no differences between socioeconomic situations and, everyday life. And so often what looks like a perfect situation is not really that at all. And so what we don't realize is that everything we do in our lives is affected by those kinds of things, whether it's facades from our family, whether it is things that have been said to us, things that we don't react very kindly to, and then years later, all of a sudden, that kernel of a seed that was planted back then suddenly grows into a tree. And we wonder why we have issues. We wonder why some of those affirmations are more difficult, right? I know y'all have seen this before, but I think it bears repeating. That this is who we are. This is our hearts, and we're born in these perfect little hearts. And then as we go through life, people say things or do things. This could be bullying at school. This could be, I had somebody actually tell me this week that their aunt called one of her daughters, oh, she's my ugly duckling. Can you imagine going through life thinking that I am the ugly duckling of the family? So, it creates baggage for us to carry around. And then we don't understand why we're not as successful as we think we need to be. And that again is because of somebody else's expectations on who we should be in our lives. And these affirmations that we saw a few minutes ago help us to realize you have every single thing you need within you right now. And you don't have to listen to everybody else's view of who you're supposed to be. You can just decide for yourself. And if you're listening to that heart space inside you, then you've got all the answers you need, because that's coming straight from God. So in this, I don't know if any of you have ever felt abandonment. That's another one of these things. Or failure, disappointments, violence. And the thing is that when we have these places in our heart that are wounded, they affect us at the strangest times. Have you ever been someplace and all of a sudden you reacted to something you saw because of one of these heart wounds? And so we have to diligently use our tools to heal from it, because the cool part is, I don't know if any of you follow David Hawkins. Y'all familiar with David Hawkins? Power versus Force. Really cool guy. I happened to meet him back in 2003 in Arizona. I was worried about him. I thought he was really looking kind of pale and listless, and I prayed for him during the first break because I thought he's not going to make it. And the more he talked, the more excited he got, and he was just this, he couldn't stop talking at the end of the day because he was all wrapped up by then. He's on the other side now, but he did some amazing work. And he developed this map of consciousness. And the map of consciousness clearly states that it is levels of frequency that we react in. So, I'm going to use my notes. If we are operating in a space of love and acceptance and joy and all of those wonderful things, we're somewhere around 700, anywhere from 200 to 700 as far as the map of consciousness goes. But if we're below 200, which is courage, which is alleviating fear, that's our first step up above 200. Below that is pride, anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, and shame. Shame, which is the byproduct of a lot of things we learn as children. Shame is 20. It's at the very bottom of the list. But if we do our work and we heal from some of those issues, we find that if we even get to acceptance or willingness, that we have the ability to raise our frequency. Now, I don't know if y'all are familiar with what's called the universal law of rhythm. People call it the law of attraction, right? So it was originally the law of rhythm, and what it said was that if I am operating at, say, love, it's the score of 500 on that map of consciousness, and I'm in the company of a lot of angry people, let's say they are at 150, that I will either lower and go down to 150, or they will raise up to 500, or they will leave. Pretty simple. So that tells you that whatever work you're doing, you have the ability to impact other people in the world if you maintain your higher levels of frequency. And there really are measuring devices that you can measure what your frequency is, and it's a snapshot, because you can go to anger in a heartbeat, then you get back up and be, oh well, I don't want to be in an angry place, I'm going to rise above it, and I'm going to be happy, and we're going to go forward with that. This is the cool part. His research also told us that if you are in an enlightenment place, and that's where you're living in light and love 100% of the time, you're somewhere in the frequency of 700 to 1,000, then you counterbalance those people under 200, 70 million people. Think about that. 70 million people. And you go, well, I'm not so enlightened. Well, okay, so if you're living in a place of love all the time, you are still counterbalancing 750,000 other people that are in those lower frequencies. And if you are just willing to reason and think through issues, you're still affecting 400,000 people. So what you do matters. And the efforts that you have at stepping above the issues that you find in your life help you not only deal with your own stuff, but deal with other people's stuff too. I like that idea. It gives me great joy. So, one of the things that I wanted to share with y'all today is often when people are having difficulties, they wonder, where am I and how did I get here? And so as I was sitting thinking about what I was going to share with y'all today, it came to a lot of people keep their secrets, whether they're family secrets or whether they're secrets about things that they've done or people that they react with. Some of them are in slavery. And, you know, we think of slavery as you're chained to your house and you can't get out of your house and you're imprisoned. And that's one kind of slavery. But aren't there other kinds of slavery?
Yes.
Absolutely. You can be your own prisoner and you can't break free no matter what you've done. Addictions are a kind of slavery. Shame. Shame is another kind of thing that we sometimes need help breaking through shame. And even silence. You're, not only do you have the secrets, but you're sworn to silence. So you can't speak about them. You know, one of the things you do to help people that have been in abusive situations is tell somebody. Tell somebody because the secrets are too difficult to maintain. And so a lot of people say, well, how did I get here? You know, how did I even get to this place? And probably a lot of people are still following the rules. You know, the rules that their family had, the rules that their church had, the rules that society had. You know, rules are about other people telling you what you need to do with your life. How many of you have done one of those independence things and said, I'm not following any rules other than my own? Yeah. Stand up and be counted, because it's really a cool thing. Because that takes one step forward to saying, I am a sovereign being. You know what that means? Sovereignty means I decide the laws that I want to have for me, who is going to be able to be accepted within my boundaries, you know, how I'm going to interact with people, and that as I admit and honor my sovereignty, I honor the sovereignty of others. Now think about that. In the situation where other people want to tell you what to do, are they encroaching on your sovereignty? If you were a country, what would that mean?
War.
War. Yeah, war. And it's often that society says, you're supposed, have you ever heard 7 out of 10 people recommend, so you need to be one out of those 7 that do it this way? I go, I'm one of the 3 that don't. Because I'm a sovereign being, that I can determine what I want as my rules or not. So, often it's parental or generational, right? A lot of the times, I'm so glad to see new families that are not taking the rules of their childhood and are implementing new ways to raise their kids, to honor their children, to encourage their children to stand up and be seen and counted and participate. I think that's fabulous. Because it means that we're not just blueprints of our past, that we're also making choices and changes that are good for our future. And in counseling people, I often see, and I'm just going to ask this, and y'all don't have to answer, but when you had a marriage, say, that didn't last, did you take a look at that person and eventually see that it's one of your parents? That they just are the same, the same exact blueprint of one of the parents that you're probably having issues with. And suddenly you marry somebody just like that. And chances are it's not going to work out unless you learn the lessons and you work through some stuff. But I think that people don't often see that. Other issues that come into play are power and control. Issues of power and control that people want to tell you what to do and how to do it. Narcissism is one that we see a lot of these days, and that is, this is my world, and I don't have to worry about anybody else in it. Y'all are here to please me. And that, to me, is just ludicrous, because we're all here to interact with each other. And that means having integrity and love and respect that's mutual for you and for everyone else that comes into contact with you. So, how can I move from slavery to sovereignty? That's the big question. Or how can I move from not being enough to being magnificent? Because that's the truth. And how can I move from those old paradigms, those old rules, into the freedom to choose what's right for me? And then how can I move from lies into truth? Because I believe that when we tell the truth, then the old paradigms don't stand the test of the truth. Do they? Can you remember something you heard as a child that you would never amount to anything, and yet you have? So that's not the truth, is it? So then you move from self-loathing to self-loving. And how does that look? How does that look? And so one of the things that I think is important is that in this journey to loving ourselves, we have to have some tools, right? So I introduced these tools to you in one form with the mini-me exercises. But I don't know, I was like y'all, I was tired of dragging all that baggage along with me. I married somebody just like my mom. We didn't ever do our dance, and so I married him, and he didn't do the dance either. And it just didn't work out. So you leave that relationship and you think, I'm a failure as a woman, I'm a failure as a wife, I'm a failure as, somebody. I was Baptist, we're supposed to be married for life. Didn't happen. So how are you going to deal with the truth of that? So years later, I start on this journey, and in this journey, I realize I'm tired of that baggage. It really doesn't serve me any longer. Can I get rid of it? I prayed about it, and I came up with this draining relationship exercise. And as we mentioned earlier, the draining relationship exercise is for those people that just the mention of their name, you go, you know what I'm talking about. So here's the deal. And these are the instructions are on my website. They're free, you can just download them, and they're detailed. But the deal is that you ask to speak with that person's higher self. You do not want to talk to their personality. And if you're wondering, well, how do you reach out to them? We're all connected. And we all have the ability to ask them questions, whether they're in the room or without even the need of a telephone. This is all done between you and Spirit and their higher self. So you ask to speak with their higher self, and I have yet to have anybody tell me no. They might be hesitant at times, but they really are willing to do that. So then the next thing you ask is, do you absolutely 100% support and accept my magnificence? And it will probably really surprise you to hear what that higher self has to say. Now then, you also have to work at the emotional level, because that's where the wounding happens. So the next question you ask that higher self of that individual that is on your last nerve is, what is hurting you so much that you have to hurt me to heal? Because they're hurting, otherwise they wouldn't hurt you. The next question is, what do you need to tell me that I might be afraid to hear? And their insights are very interesting. Now, the last question that you ask is, what wisdom do you have to share with me? Because they've known you from a different perspective than you perhaps even know yourself. And so when you ask that question, be prepared to hear something that might surprise you. Because remember, it's coming from their higher self, not their personality. Now then, the next thing is a little different than the mini-me's because you are connected to them. Otherwise, they wouldn't even come to mind if you thought about them, right? So you do kind of a scan and you go, oh yeah, I feel like they're corded right here in my heart. And it's a dryer plug. You know, it's not a nice little electric plug. It's a dryer plug. And you pull it out and you tell them, because you're a sovereign being, you tell them this contract is null and void. If we are to continue in relationship, we have to renegotiate terms. Okay. So remember to scan for other places, because it might be that they've plugged into your feet. I had this lady the other day, I said, I feel an anchor. She goes, yeah, I have anchors on my feet, tattooed there at the request of my husband. I'm like, oh. So make sure you scan and find all of the places that they might be plugged into. I know a lot of people say cut the cords. I don't believe in cutting cords because I really want them disconnected. And then this is the best part. You put them in that pink bubble of heart-to-heart healing, unconditional love, and it heals the holes in your heart and the holes in theirs. Because remember, we love them. They have signed on to play a role. And when they get out of their costume, they are us and we are them.
That's right.
Now, that's the hard part. That gets beyond our personality and back to the oneness. Because we don't really want to disconnect from them. We want to change the dance that we do with them. We want to change the impact they have on our lives. And we want to reinforce our sovereignty at the same time we recognize that we're part of the whole. Isn't that why we're here?
Yeah.
I think it's why we're here. So when we deal with these issues that make us feel less than, it's much easier to become more self-loving. Because isn't that a loving thing to do? To heal from those issues so that they're not a part of our lives anymore? And it's not easy work, but it's very, very, very well worth the effort. So, when you are more loving, you become your own warrior, a love warrior. Because when you're driving down the street and somebody does something that, cuts in front of you, you go, they must be in a bigger hurry than I am. Have a good day. I know all of y'all say that. I know. Just say it. I'm still working on my own stuff too. The other thing is that you have a better idea of how to trust your own inner guidance. I happen to believe, when they were talking about you're inspired, but the fear stops you from doing what you were born to do. Part of that is having faith in your own ability to listen to what God has in mind for you. And then let the fear go away so you can step into the truth of who you are and why. You're the only one that can do your purpose. Mm-hmm. Nobody else can do what you're designed to do. That's why you're here. So by being more self-loving, you're more supportive of why you're here and to complete that. And when you do what you're here to do, don't you feel better about life? You feel better. You're not being your own abuser. You are being your own lover. And you are more lovable, you're more loving, and you are more powerful, because the true power in our world is the power of unconditional love. It has the power to heal, it has the power to change, it has the power to see who you really are, not who somebody else believes you should be. You treat yourself like someone you love. How many of you would stand the test of you treat everybody more wonderfully than you treat yourself? I'm guilty of that too. And so you have to get to the place, I call it a tiebreaker vote. You get the tiebreaker for your own life. You do something for somebody else, you do something for yourself, and they go, well, I want you to do this, and you get the tiebreaker to say, yeah, oh, no, I don't think so. And give yourself permission to say that. You treat yourself like someone you love. You listen to what you want and need, and then you give it to yourself. I would think that often today I'm going to go meet my mom for lunch. So I went through my house, I thought, she would need this, she would need this, she would need this, and she would need this. And I have it all packaged up for her. And there was something that I was going to put in her stack, and it was really, I wanted to keep it. So I thought about it. The old me probably would have taken it to her. The new me said no, and it's still at my house. Hope she didn't watch this. She'll want it. But you also have to be your own best friend. You know, we grow up and we learn it's really selfless to give everything to everyone else. And I say, as I've gotten older, maybe it's okay to honor yourself and not just give all of yourself away. Unless everybody else is giving themselves away to you. Because it needs to be equal, or you accommodating others makes you feel less than others. So if you feel good about it and you feel loving about it, that's where we want to be. Now, I believe over the next few weeks, we're going to have some sessions here at the church after church. I think it's going to be 3 weeks. So if you want to come and work in a group setting, we'll work through some of these exercises so you get an idea of how they can be applied in your life. And if you want my help, I'll be here to help you. And then we'll see where that goes.
Thank you so much.
We need to love ourselves enough to let go of the past and have an idea of who we are to show up for in the future. That's our legacy from God, from Mother, Father, God. That's our legacy. We are loved, we are loved, and we are lovable.